Hey, welcome to another Nootropics 20, where we talk about nootropics for 20 minutes straight, maybe a little more. Everything that we do, to include this program, is brought to you by sponsors, and we are our own sponsors. We got 4 major products I'd like you to take a look at. Number 1, a nootropic stack called Cortex. We made Cortex for entrepreneurs that need focus and motivation and verbal fluency and energy for long periods of time. Right now, $31 at livecortex.com. If you need a discount, use the coupon code 5, F-I-V-E. That'll take it down to $26 a bottle. If you want to have a conversation with me over the phone where we talk about your nootropics history, get your stacks together, have me suggest 5 to 6 stacks that I think will work for you, and then have us work via email thereafter to refine and perfect those stacks, get the Nootropics Consulting Service. That is exactly what we do with it. If you want to not talk to me and become an expert on understanding how to stack and use nootropics and induce certain mental states on cue, you have to know how. We created a course for that, and that's called the Nootropics Masterclass. Last thing, if you're a guy and have low test and don't want to go on TRT and want to see improvements in all things related to testosterone, like sex drive and masculinity and muscle building, get the Viking Testosterone Protocol. We created a protocol for it, and it works. Do all that stuff at livecortex.com. If you need any discounts on either the Masterclass or the Testosterone Protocol, email me at ryan@livecortex.com. If you're going to pull the trigger on either one of those, I can give you a discount. So do it. Okay, here is the Nootropics 20. We're going to go through, I got 14 things to talk about here. They're all pretty awesome relating to biohacking and nootropics, mostly nootropics. And we will start with the first one. Best time to take anti-racetam. Well, I think there's many good times to take anti-racetam. One of the things that I like to do and have historically done that works well is taking it in like 500 or 700 milligrams with my morning supplement regimen, like B complex, multivitamin, vitamin D, amino acids. And it just sort of, the acute effect is a little different in that it's not as noticeable, but I've got this sort of background functionality in terms of memory and stimulation and the capacity to switch tasks easier. So I really like it. So morning might be a really good time if you take it with your supplement regimen. Other than that, you're really just talking about 2 to 3 hour stints in which you need a good degree of your memory about you. So if you're going to be sitting down and doing any work that has to do with not only working memory, but it's like if you have better working memory, you're focusing better because you can hold things in your brain longer. So, if you're going to sit down to do anything related to focus, then that would be the best time to take anti-racetam. Worst time to take anti-racetam would be at nighttime because it might mess with your sleep. Question number 2 is how much citicoline to support racetam usage? Well, I mean, this all depends on your dose on racetams and how much citicoline you can tolerate. For some people, they just, for one reason or another, and I've got theories about the reasons, can deal with a lot more citicoline or alpha GPC. Usually, I mean, in my theory, it's because the person has been, if they're not a normal person that can just tolerate lots of citicoline, they're a person that has been taking something that is suppressing acetylcholine release. Okay, and so they're in this sort of state where cholinergic activity is just like not running normally in the brain, and so they can tolerate high doses of it. So you have to figure out which one of those people are you. It's so specific, and then figure out your dose from there. If I could look at the general population of people that we've consulted on nootropics, combined with the anecdotals on the web around choline, and then extract from that a best dose with racetams, it'd be like between 50 and 150 milligrams. That's very clear. Next question is about anti-racetam again. What are anti-racetam's exact glutamate properties? Okay, yeah, we don't really ever talk about this all that much. We talk about its activation of AMPA receptors, which is facilitating LTP, long-term potentiation, and then thereby facilitating memory and stimulation. But instead of agonizing and binding to the AMPA receptors, which is what a lot of drugs do and a lot of nootropics might do. Piracetam works by increasing currents, AMPA currents, by reducing the desensitization of the AMPA receptor, if that makes sense. So it's doing something a little different than a typical agonist. It is resensitizing AMPA receptors. Therefore, this glutamate signal and therefore the long-term potentiation flows better, and you get the better effect by the resensitizing of the receptor. Next question. How to bypass tolerance to nootropics? Okay, that's a really important question and something I've been looking at a lot and kind of studying and thinking about a lot lately, based on my, being into and studying serotonin a lot lately, as you guys might have figured out. There's a lot to come on that, by the way, and depression and libido and all that stuff. But there's two ways to reduce tolerance or bypass tolerance to nootropics. One is theoretical, one is proven. The first way is to not give your brain enough time for essentially desensitization or downregulation. That's the first thing, and you do that by only taking certain stacks or certain compounds like once or twice a week. That's the best way. If someone, during consulting, folks will find stacks that really work and they're like, man, I want to take this like 4 or 5 days a week, and sometimes I cannot stop them from doing that. Other times, if they really want to optimize brain function, there are some people who are just like, no, I want to do exactly what you say. And we tend to have the best results with them. They will take a stack on Monday, a different stack on Tuesday, a different stack on Wednesday, a different stack on Thursday, and a different stack on Friday. And then they pretty much bypass tolerance to most nootropics in that regard, as long as they're switching between systems in that time frame. The other way is more of a, I don't think it's a theory, I think it's definitely true, but we have to figure out as nootropics enthusiasts and neuroscience enthusiasts how to do this, and that is to, again, talking about Piracetam, like resensitize receptor sites. A lot of the tolerance that comes from nootropics is just a desensitization of a receptor site and a downregulation of the response that you get from the given neurotransmitter related to the nootropic. So, like, if you're taking Bromantane for a while, as an example, the anecdotals out there are pretty clear that you're getting libido and motivation increases while taking it, and then when you stop taking it, you have major decreases and all of that stuff below your initial baseline, and that's probably due to some sort of downregulation or desensitization of dopamine signaling and receptors. So how one would fix that would be to resensitize dopamine receptors. The same thing with cholinergics, man. If you're taking oxiracetam consistently, getting a great result, and then suddenly it stops working, you have to figure out how to resensitize acetylcholine and put that system essentially back to where it was. Doesn't that make sense, right? In the beginning, when you got a good result from the nootropic, the receptor site and the feedback mechanisms were in one state. And that was good, you got a good response from it. Now that you're not getting a response from a particular nootropic, those receptors and that signaling is definitely in another state. And usually it sits that way for a while. That's why you have to take big breaks from certain nootropics. If you've taken them for a long time, it stays that way, in that changed state from the nootropic compound. And then you have to then go and figure out how to resensitize the receptor and essentially backtrack on what you've done with that system, which is hard, and there's so much to it. And for some receptors, it's not just presynaptic and postsynaptic. There's autoreceptors, and there's all these feedback mechanisms. Dude, it's so complex. It requires, to understand it all, man, you got to sit and read for a long, long time about stuff, and sit and think about it, and wake up at 5 a.m. and think about it. And this kind of stuff that I do. So that would be my answer to that. Next point, Piracetam helps my creativity. Why? Well, there's cholinergic receptor activation, which is going to just produce more acetylcholine and help you to function better. But I would say that the reason this is happening more so is due to the increase in connectivity between brain regions through kind of this thread-like material in the middle of the brain, called the corpus callosum. So when you can have hemispheric integration in the brain, via corpus callosum, allowing communication between the hemispheres to be better, then you have better creativity and you meditate better. So that would be my answer to that. Piracetam does enhance communication in the corpus callosum between hemispheres. Best combination for caffeine and theanine. Well, I think it differs for different people, but the major known study on it is 50 milligrams of caffeine and 100 milligrams of theanine. And in the study is called Combined Effects of L-theanine and Caffeine on Cognitive Performance. Something to that effect. You can Google that. You'll find it. That dose improved the speed of task switching and reduced distractibility. So, I mean, the studies say 50 milligrams caffeine, 100 theanine. That ratio is actually pretty good. If you scale the ratio up, just keep the ratio the same, but scale it upwards, and that's really what I would say about that. In this case, we want to kind of trust this study. Do side effects go away with nootropics when your body adjusts? No. The answer is no. Side effects are just an indication that you're taking too much of something and you got to dial back, scale back. Start getting into understanding receptor sites and their response to nootropics. Think about adding cofactors. There's certain nootropics that are just best taken with cofactors like B vitamins and stuff. And so, yeah, you rarely do side effects that you're getting from taking a stack go away because your body adjusts to it or something. If anything, it just gets worse. So you have to dial back your doses on these things, figure out exactly what in the stack is causing side effects. Usually it's just too much of one compound or another. And then adjust and then repeat the experiment and see if you can fix it. Most people can when they get the doses right on stuff. Next thing is a point, which I think is really cool, super cool for folks. Success with microdosing of Bromantane. 5 milligrams increases my libido and motivation. A noticeable bump above baseline. Really, really cool. 5 milligrams Bromantane. That's pretty cool to be able to do that. Will it prevent downregulation? So back to this sensitization thing. Well, yeah, so first of all, yes, microdosing Bromantane is really cool. You do not get the standout long-term modafinil effect where you're 12 hours of motivation. You also, though, don't get the negative effects, which is that you don't sleep on high-dose Bromantane. So I think that's really pretty much a good thing. The question of will it prevent tolerance or downregulation, I can't answer because probably there's a threshold of like dopamine agonism that, in this case, that if you cross that threshold, then the brain starts to downregulate your response to dopamine. So, if 5 milligrams increases dopamine enough to get you functioning really well and have libido and motivation increases, but isn't enough to cross that threshold to induce downregulation, then you won't have downregulation. You won't have tolerance. So, I mean, I don't, I could theorize that taking Bromantane in 5 milligrams twice a week or 3 times a week max it'd be more likely that you'd prevent that downregulated state or the tolerance state if you did that. That's my take on that. What activities do you notice effects from nootropics more? I guess that's sort of like, yeah, I mean, if you're engaged in a particular task and you've taken nootropics, like which task do you actually notice the nootropics more? It really all depends. I mean, if you're taking something for verbal fluency, definitely verbal fluency in those cases. Like the Cortex stack is like verbal fluency king. And I definitely notice it during verbal tasks in which I've got to be verbally fluent, like doing these videos or doing podcasts or something, or getting up and giving a speech. So that would be one thing. For me, additionally, personally, I notice with aniracetam and oxiracetam particularly that my distractibility is less. And so what situations would that be in? Doing work, sitting in front of my laptop doing work, my capacity to stay on task is a lot better. And so I notice when I'm trying to stay on task and not be distracted, that certain nootropics help me to do that, and that's kind of where I notice them. I think say the last thing is if I got to work on something for a pretty long time, which would like be like, you know, me really wanting to get a big thing done. You know, I was like, working on the Nootropics masterclass. I was taking modafinil a couple times. Modafinil is very noticeable in doing something that requires a lot of mental endurance. So that's what I'd say about that. How does meditation affect the stress response? Hey, Ryan, love your content. I've been meditating a lot and noticed I've been responding better to stress. What are the mechanisms? Okay. What you're really looking at with meditation is enhancing neuronal function around areas of the brain where you engage deliberate control and attention of your brain. You enhance neuronal function, and neuronal coupling is really what it's called. In those areas, the inferior frontal gyrus is one of the areas. I'm sure there are other areas, but that's what sticks in my mind. You also enhance neuronal coupling and functioning in the insula, which is a big part of the brain related to perception. So if your perception is changing about stress, because you've enhanced neuronal coupling in the insula, which is related to perception, then there's your answer. But there's many other mechanisms to it too, like alpha brainwave production in the frontal lobes. So I think it's pretty multifactorial and complex, but I would say those two are really what you're talking about in changing your response to stress. What else? Is St. John's wort better than an SSRI? Man, these are complex questions. I would say, as far as I can tell, you know, SSRIs are agonists of 5-HT1A and serotonin in general, but eventually that leads to desensitization of those receptors and therefore less serotonin being produced naturally by the person. SJW works a little differently in that it is making the, it's so complex. It is making the autoreceptors on, I believe, the postsynaptic neurons, postsynaptic serotonin neurons, 5-HT1A receptors. It resensitizes them so that you can then produce natural serotonin on your own. So yeah, I do therefore think that SJW would be better than SSRIs in that particular case, because SSRIs are essentially making the 5-HT1A autoreceptors not work very well. Or tell the brain, hey, over time it tells the brain, hey, there's enough serotonin here because you're flooding it with an SSRI and therefore you don't make enough of it. So yeah, I'd say SJW is probably better than an SSRI. Different mechanistically for sure. Let's see. Cannabis, good or bad for depression? I would say that cannabis is generally good for depression. It does a lot of things, but anecdotally, it makes people feel a lot more creative and kind of better about things. Slows the brain down a little bit, which is good. I'd say the effect is, for me at least, and I think for a lot of other folks, it's better post-acute phase of the cannabis like state, when you've got the effect from initial cannabis ingestion and then like 2 to 3 hours later, and then maybe in the ensuing day or two, it seems to be better than in the acute state. Cannabis is an agonist for certain serotonin receptors. So I would say generally it's good for depression. That's what I would say about that. Last question, anecdotal of ginkgo. I've been taking ginkgo biloba and I've noticed my brain is a lot more focused on intellectual activities. What is your take on that? Yeah, that's actually a good question. That is the last question. My experience mirrors that. I don't take ginkgo a whole lot, but I do have, actually I have it right here. Yeah, I've got a 60, I don't know if you can see it, but a 60 milligram supplement of ginkgo biloba. What I would say is this: ginkgo for me makes it so that I want to engage in more intellectual tasks. Like this guy, I'm just more interested in the detailed breakdown of things that are happening in my life, whether I'm studying modafinil or studying racetams or studying AMPA receptors or studying serotonin, or studying business or studying entrepreneurship or just kind of wanting to retain information and put things together. When you have a larger reservoir of intellectual capacity, you want to do things that use your intellectual capacity. Like huperzine A is a great example. That gives me a lot more logical, mathematical, intellectual capacity. So I actually want to do things related to mathematics and logical thinking and that sort of brain function. Almost every time in the past like 3 years that I've taken huperzine A, I've taken a IQ test because I just like looking at shapes and a succession of shapes, and then what's the next shape supposed to be. That's like the basis for a lot of IQ tests, and along with other kind of weird things like you'll have like a 6 letters and they'll be all jumbled, or 8 letters or something, and they're like which country could you make out of these letters, and you have a time limit on it and how quickly you have to answer the question, and it's like, oh, that's England. So yeah, that's what ginkgo does too. It just sort of makes my brain want to focus on intellectual tasks and putting things together. I would say there's a bit of working memory increase, anecdotally for me at least, in taking ginkgo biloba too. And so I like it. I like it as a subtle nootropic. Like, we sometimes talk about non-major neurotransmitter modifying nootropic compounds and how their utility, how useful they are. And they are useful in situations where you don't want a stimulant effect and have your brain working 100 miles an hour. You just want to kind of have your baseline, maybe add some caffeine, you're functioning pretty good. And then you just want enhanced function with no stimulant effect. That's my take on ginkgo. I actually think ginkgo is really, really cool for a lot of things. Erection quality, for mood, and in this case for improving intellect. Hope that's been useful. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. This has been another episode of Nootropics 20. More to come. We're actually going to double this as a podcast. I think it's 118 or 119 on the Cortex Nootropics podcast. So those of you that are interested in listening like while you're driving, subscribe to the Cortex Labs Nootropics podcast on iTunes, and then this will double as a podcast. It'll be the next one that launches. I'm probably going to do that today. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Remember, sponsors the Cortex stack. Look, I'm going to give you guys some coupon codes here for Cortex. Coupon code is 5 FIVE. That takes it down to $26 a bottle. Most of the really, really good, reputable pre-made stacks are much more expensive than that. We're talking about 35 to 40 something bucks, and you got qualia all the way up there at like whatever the hell qualia is. It's like very expensive for folks. But also does work for folks. I'm not bashing qualia or anything. But look, Cortex powerful stack for basically everything, especially verbal fluency, motivation, mental energy. Just go to livecortex.com and buy it. And again, if you need a discount, use FIVE. If you want to talk with me for 40 minutes and we kind of hash out your nootropics experience and experimentation, and you want me to sort of positively critique it and then suggest to you 5 or 6 stacks that I think will work for you, and then work with you via email thereafter to refine those stacks to perfection, you get to do a lot there. You get to have good stacks, but then you get to learn the process of refining stacks. You take that away forever. Get the Nootropics consulting service. That is what it is there for. If you want to bypass me completely, which is totally cool, some people, it's not their thing to get on a phone call and do this, get the Nootropics Masterclass. That'll actually ascend you a lot further in your stack formulation and being able to induce like motivation and memory and focus and mental energy on cue. That is the Nootropics Masterclass. It's a video course where we teach you how to do that. If you need a coupon code for that, I need you to email me, ryan@livecortex.com. If you're really serious about getting the Nootropics Masterclass, email me and I'll give you a coupon code. If you're a guy that wants to make all the pathways that produce testosterone work better, we will help you do that. There is 9 major things in the Viking testosterone protocol, all targeted toward addressing every part of testosterone production. And I mean, look, it works. It'll put hair on your chest, and possibly literally get the Viking testosterone protocol at livecortex.com. It's one of our products that I am most excited about because it relates directly to me, because I had low test, had to figure it all out, then created the protocol. Do it at livecortex.com. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Talk to you next time.